Am I audible, Digvijay? Am I visible clearly? Awesome. We'll start in 1 minute from now perfectly. Greetings, everyone. A hearty welcome. I'm P. Sharon Kumar, the founder and CEO of SK Associates and Group, an ex-analyst at Citigroup and JP Morgan, the leading Wall Street banks, New York Street Exchange, and an ex-associate solicitor at the Supreme Court of India and the Karnataka High Court. I'm your host for today's Conference 1.0 on emerging role of social entrepreneurship in the era of pandemic. SK Associates and Group is an ISO certified internationally accredited management consulting firm registered under MSMED Act 2006 with the Government of India. We provide consulting services in the domain of compliance, operations, marketing, research and development, human capital, strategy and operations to budding student entrepreneurs across the nation. SK Association Group was formed with a dream to provide consulting services to student entrepreneurs and help them in developing the national economy by establishing the dream firms across various industries. We work with startups and train potential student entrepreneurs who are aiming to bring a significant change either in their business model, in the scale of operations, or both. To succeed in this endeavor, our clients need a specific type of consultant, someone who is a problem solver. Typically, such a person is entrepreneurial and passionate, thinks out of the box, has an idea where the problem lies, or to analyze it, and most importantly, what will serve as a perfect solution for it. Such people have lived and worked in different continents and countries. They have worked on exciting projects. They have taken risks and have scars to show for it. We call such people transformational consultants. We have worked over the last 3 years to build a network of such people, reaching out to them across the universities, across industries, and across the gamut of functional roles. Time and again, we have seen magic happen when we find the perfect solutions for our clients. And this is what drives us and keeps us motivated to bring up the next generation of iconic organizations in the corporate sector. Am I clear? Audible? Yeah, thank you. We aim to mentor 3 lakh students across India by 2026 by providing them with consulting services in strategy and operation, human capital, compliance, legal advisory, research and development, taxation, marketing, and help them in establishing their ventures by investing 20 crores US dollars in their startups over the next 5 years. We also aim to provide 50,000 employment opportunities to various lecturers across the nation in the upcoming 5 years. We strongly believe that strategic alliance and collaboration should help us achieve our vision in working for the cause of global economic growth. Our executive management and operations teams are always dedicated on working towards entrepreneurship development and community impact with a concentration on the point. Students are the upcoming future generations of our nation and need to be empowered for global economic growth. To know more about us, visit our website https www.skngroup.com. So, I'm going to start my startup. I want to know the cause I should work for. What should be my vision? What should be my mission? And what could possibly be my executive plan of action? How is my startup going to make this world a better place to live? How is it going to help in community growth and development? This is a very popular question every first-time founder generally has when he or she is starting a startup and approaches my consultants or any other consulting firm prior to becoming an entrepreneur. Even I usually doubt it. I have sufficient abilities to lead an organization. This results in a search for co-founders or consultants from every background to actually help you make decisions, see a vision, and help you work for a social cause. Because as is seen in research, Organizations that work for a social cause are the ones that are sustainable in the longer run, rather than organizations who just focus on making profits and sales. In answer to all the questions of budding students who wish to emerge as entrepreneurs, we have organized Conference 1.0 on emerging role of social entrepreneurship in the era of pandemic. Now, I would like to introduce all our honorable guests for today. Firstly, I would like to introduce Mr. Anthony P. Salvador, who has worked as a judge in the subordinate judiciary of Karnataka for more than 25 years and retired as the district and session judge in 2014 and thereafter worked as judge in the family court till 2016. He joined as senior faculty at a law school. In 2017, he was appointed as Commission of Inquiry by the government of Kerala to inquire into the genesis of a scandalous news published by a TV channel against a minister of state. The inquiry report with recommendations has been accepted by the government. This inquiry report is a case study on media law and ethics. Besides teaching law, his time is also devoted for legal services, and he also serves as a panel arbitrator and conciliator at the High Court of Kerala. Our next guest is Mr. Vaibhav Maheshwari, who is the chief spokesperson of Aam Aadmi Party from the state of Uttar Pradesh. He hails from Lucknow and is a mass media personality who has starred in many talk shows and news debates on multiple political and social issues. Being a politician, Mr. Maheshwari is one of the most concerned citizens with a wide range of knowledge on various social issues. He is also a former IT techie who has a keen eye for businesses in the manufacturing and the information technology industry. We are also pleased to have Mr. Alan Daville, who is a multi-award winning entrepreneur who has created and owned several startups in his 25 years as an entrepreneur. As a transformational business coach and CEO of Heart to Heart Business, I believe he believes that our world, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, has been catapulted into the near future. Businesses must adjust to a new way of competing in today's world. We also have Ms. Kaftar Al-Alutwai, whose work redefines leadership from the inside out and enables leaders and teams to reach their highest potential. She is the founder and CEO of Consciousness Together Ms. Inc., faculty and mentor with leadership that works India, facilitator with the business plan for peace in the UK, and leadership advisor, which she did at LROs in Canada. Now, I would like to request all the attendees and the guest speakers to kindly unmute your, open your webcams and be on video for the rest of the conference. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Anthony P. Salvador to give his speech. Thank you.
Am I audible? Though we are from different parts of the world, I greet you according to the Indian Standard Time. A very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I thank the organizers of this function, this conference, for having extended invitation to address you all. First of all, I congratulate my audience and send my warm greetings to you all because we have hopefully survived the worst of the pandemic, COVID-19, in 2020 and 2021. So we are expecting a fourth wave of COVID-19. We are not afraid but confident to face it. The theme of this international conference is the emerging role of social entrepreneurship in the era of the pandemic. My talk is on the role of the lawyers and law firms as social entrepreneurs and social enterprises, because my experience is in the field of law and justice. This post-pandemic era is going to be challenging, not only for the layman, but also for the lawmen. The world economy was shattered by the pandemic. While millions died, Millions and millions lost their employment and livelihood. International Labour Organization has reported that the number of hours worked globally dropped in the second quarter of 2022, nearly 20% below the employment situation before the pandemic. Though there was a gradual improvement in the situation later, the number of hours worked globally dropped in the first quarter of 2022 to 3.8% below the employment situation before the pandemic. The most affected are undoubtedly the self-employed, the micro, the small and medium enterprises. Now, to compound the crisis, the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia and the consequent disruptions in the supply chain has further compounded the economic crisis by the spiraling fuel and food grain prices. There is a looming Great Depression. When we examine history, a war follows a pandemic, or a pandemic follows a war. We are repeating the history. The recent report of the Oxfam International predicts that 263 million more people will crash into extreme poverty this year at the rate of 1 million people every 33 hours. The collapse of the Sri Lankan economy is any indication. Many of the third world countries will follow it. It is in the above global scenario, the challenges faced by the lawyers and law firms as social entrepreneurs and social enterprises have to be considered. Most of the members of the legal profession suffered the worst when the people remained indoors and courts locked up during the pandemic. But the worst is not yet over for the legal profession. At the best, we are only in an interval. Justice William O. Douglas of the US Supreme Court, who was a frequent visitor to the subcontinent, gave the following advice to Indian lawyers and law practitioners. I quote, "As nightfall does not come all at once, neither does oppression. In both instances, there is a twilight when everything remains seemingly unchanged. It is in such twilight we all must be aware of change in the air. Cover light lest we become unwittingly victims of darkness." Unquote. India's legal system is in distress. Recently, Chief Justice of India Ramana said that the sheer defiance of government towards judicial decisions, pronouncements, their inclination to pass off the responsibility of decision making to courts, and the legislature's ambiguity, lack of foresight, and public consultations before making laws have led to docket explosion. He said that the contempt petitions are a new category of burden on the courts, which is already overburdened with crores of pending cases, which is not good for the health of the democracy. On the other hand, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who addressed the joint conference of the chief ministers of the states and the chief justices of the high courts, said that nearly 3.5 lakh under trials were in jails for petty offences and appeared to give priority to such cases so that such prisoners would be released on bail. There is increasing violence in the modern society, especially after the pandemic. Whether it is in the Asia Pacific, African, European countries, or United States of America, as recent instances have shown. Rule of law, which is the bedrock of democracy, is being flouted. The policies of hatred, discrimination, and revenge are there for all to see. If there is no rule of law, lawyers and judges would become irrelevant. It is in this context the public role of lawyers assumes importance. When India was under the oppressive rule of the British, the national movement emerged, and in the ensuing freedom struggle, leading advocates of the day took center stage and leadership. It is interesting to note that most of the leaders of the freedom struggle were also leading lawyers of the day. Gandhiji started his public service as a lawyer in South Africa and spent 20 years there before returning to India and assuming leadership in the freedom struggle. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Babu Rajendra Prasad, B.R. Ambedkar, all were great lawyers. Majority of the members of the Constituent Assembly belonged to the legal fraternity. All those leaders had an option to continue and concentrate on their lucrative practice and could have ignored the national issues. But they gave up their rich practice to serve the country. That is what lawyers are supposed to do in these challenging times. Lawyers have to contribute to public service, to regain the center stage in public life from the professional politicians who indulge in corruption and exploitation of the common people. In the globalized world, where private enterprises gobble up even public sector companies, lawyers and law firms cannot survive without a social commitment in addition to their professional commitment. In this age, every lawyer is a social entrepreneur and every law firm a social enterprise in the legal market or legal industry, as said by Professor Richard Susskind. Legal practitioner's profession is not merely a means of livelihood. He has necessarily to contribute to social well-being. The globalization of mercantile laws, including patent laws and arbitration laws, after the United Nations Commission on International Trade Laws compelled our Parliament to enact laws relating to arbitration and patent to enforce the provisions suitable to the World Trade Organization. In circumstances, the legal professionals cannot sit tight, closing the doors and windows of their bar and courtrooms. What we have seen in the past and prior to the pandemic was that the working of lawyers and procedures of laws were much traditional as per the codified procedural laws. Now all that is changed during the pandemic and in the post-pandemic world due to the increasing adoption of information communication technology in court procedures and by the legal practitioners. In his prophetic book, Tomorrow's Lawyers, An Introduction to Your Future, published in 2013, Professor Richard Susskind of United Kingdom predicted that conventional lawyers would not be as prominent in society. On the other hand, he predicted that a promising range of new opportunities and new careers for people trained in law, such as the legal knowledge engineer, the legal technologist, the legal hybrid, the legal process analyst, the legal project manager, the ODR practitioner, the legal management consultant, the legal risk manager. As you know, some of these new jobs are already there. Hope the young lawyers hearing me would refer to the book for more details. As we know, it is now the age of ADR, ODR. Disputes and litigations are being compelled to be resolved and settled outside the court due to the worldwide acceptance of the ADR, ODR system, which includes arbitration, conciliation, and mediation. As far as India is concerned, insertion of Article 39A in the Constitution of India, providing for legal aid, and the subsequent enactment of the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 brought about revolutionary changes in the practice of law and the dispensation of justice. The principal objective of the National Legal Services Authority and the various authorities under it, reaching the grassroots level, is to provide free and competent legal services to the weaker sections of the society and ensure that opportunities for securing justice are not denied to any citizen by reason of economic other disabilities, and to organize lok adalats for amicable settlement of disputes. So the lok adalat, rather people's courts, have succeeded over the years to dispose of courts of compensation cases and other disputes, and in rendering legal services to the weaker sections to a certain extent. The pendency of the cases in the courts waiting for adjudication has only multiplied. It is a case of too many judges. It is a case of too many cases and too few judges. The real issues are yet to be addressed by the executive and the judiciary. Still, there is delay in the appointment of judges to fill up the existing vacancies in the high courts and the subordinate courts of the country, and no substantial steps taken to raise the number of judges compared to other developed countries. It is in this context the lawyers and law firms have changed their attitude and approach in the resolution of disputes and settlement of cases that come before them. Apart from those cases which are to be disposed of only through adjudication, all the other disputes and cases which come before them should be resolved or settled through the ADR ODR system and thereby fulfill our social commitments. In this context, Gandhiji is an inspiration and role model for all lawyers. You may be wondering. Let us see how Gandhiji, as young lawyer, settled Dada Abdullah's case as recounted by him in his autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with the Truth, in his own words. Quote, I saw the facts of Dada Abdullah's case, made it very strong indeed, and that law was bound to be on his side. But I also saw that the litigation, if it were persisted in, would ruin the plaintiff and the defendant, who were relatives and both belonged to the same city. No one knew how long the case might go on. Should it be allowed to be continued, to be fought out in the court, it might go on indefinitely and to no advantage of either party. I approached Tayyib Sheikh was the defendant, and requested him to meet his lawyer and advised him to go for arbitration. At last, Tayyib Sheikh agreed. An arbitrator was appointed, and the case was argued before him, and Dada Abdullah won. But that would not satisfy me. If my client were to seek immediate satisfaction of the award, it would be impossible for Tayyib Sheikh to meet the whole of the amount. And there was an unwritten law among the Porbandar Memons living in South Africa that should be referred to bankruptcy. It was impossible for Tayyib to pay down the whole sum of about £37,000 and cost. You must remember that £37,000 and cost was a huge amount at the end of the 19th century. Finally, Gandhiji persuaded Dada Abdullah to allow Tayyip to pay in moderate installments. And both were happy over the result, and both rose in public estimation. Gandhi says, my joy was boundless. I had learned the true practice of law. I had learned to find out the better side of human nature and to enter men's heart. I realized that the true function of a lawyer was to unite parties rather than asunder. The lesson was so indelibly burned into me that a large part of my time during the 20 years of my practice as a lawyer was occupied in bringing about private compromises of hundreds of cases. I lost nothing thereby, not even money, certainly not my soul. Unquote. See what an inspiring example for lawyers of even modern times in this age of ADR, ODR, when people are troubled by economic crisis. So this Gandhian model is to be followed by lawyers and law firms in this era of emerging social enterprises to cope with the challenge of the post-pandemic era. If lawyers and law students could volunteer a part of their time in providing legal aid and legal extension and consultancy services and bring about settlement of cases that will contribute to the realization of a true welfare state, securing to all its citizens justice in its true sense. Well, friends, it is time to conclude my talk. Thank you once again for inviting me to this conference. Thank you all the participants for hearing me patiently. Thank you all.
Your speech was really amazing, Mr. Salvador. However, I had one or two questions, after which I would love the audience to put
Okay,
them.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So my first question here is that from the 1990s, as you said, the first lawyers in the country, originally Mohandas Karamchand Gandhiji, our honorable father of the nation, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, all these leaders came from the segmentation of lawyers, legal background. But right now we are in the need of global business leaders to empower the global economic growth. How do you see this evolving change over this one century?
See, though the time has passed, the problems are the same. Human problems are the same. So, our attitude and approach to solve human problems for lawyers and judges, it is a legal problem. But the people who approach us, it is their a question of existence, especially during these trying times. There is no change in there should be no change in our basic attitude. Of course, we have to adopt the technologies of the time, but there is no change in the humanity. It should always be, we have to be helpful as far as possible. Cut out the delay. Offer a solution to them. Of course, we have to get money, but not over a long period of time, ruining both the plaintiff and the defendant, as in the case of Dada Abdullah's case. Gandhiji visualized the scenario. Both parties are going to be ruined. Legally taken, one party will win, the other may eventually commit suicide. The plaintiff will not get any penny. So, he avoided that situation of destroying both parties, but offered a win-win situation for both parties. So, whatever may be the changes in our concept of organizing our profession, social entrepreneurship, of course, we must have a share of profits. You can still get profits by cutting out the delay. Nowadays, what happens is that we are charging for a result. The time, according to the time. But now we should charge for the result. Now you get adjournments. Now we are professionals. We are exchanging trade secrets. Get adjournments, get fees. Get adjournments, get fees. But what about the solution to the problem? Instead, we offer the parties a solution at the earliest. As I said, it is not a legal problem for them, it is a human problem, a matter of life and liberty. I think that we should adopt that strategy. We have to inculcate a culture of this Gandhiji, what Gandhiji preached a century and half ago. We can bring about that even now. Of course, with all our technologies, we can offer better services. Now, the online travel to New York, Tokyo, or London to resolve disputes. Yes, that's a boon of technology. So, this boon of technology adopted into the legal system, into the legal practice, we can use it for the advantage of the people, cutting out the delay, a result-oriented handling of the cases, management of the cases. That is what I suggest to the young generation after having and served more than a quarter century on the bench. Thank you.
Actually, that was a very intelligent answer, Ms. Salvador, because ODR has actually evolved by this technological advancements and all this online dispute resolution system. Even had 2 or 3 conferences on those topics previously. However, my second question again here, sorry for like putting it forward again, but my second question here is like, since today's topic is completely on social entrepreneurship, as I said in my speech, entrepreneurs do come for a vision of theirs, to develop the community, to grow it, and to make it a better place to live in. However, we have many youngsters to be out there who are just like becoming entrepreneurs out of a passion with a strong energy, but in the long run, they just want to focus on making profits by making the industry more competitive. What's your perspective on those segmentation of people?
Of course, there should be profits. A laborer is entitled to his wages. For us, it is a matter of our existence. We should have our livelihood. Of course, you are entitled to a comfortable life with your training and this portion. At the same time, what I am suggesting is it is not at the expense of the delay of the disposal of the case. That is why I suggested result oriented. You offer a result the party wants at the earliest. You suggest it. A party come with a money dispute. The problem one party is not paying is that he has no money, but he is confident if he gets some time, he will be able to make it. So there are such genuine litigants. We should help them. That is why all this ADR comes into play. Understanding each other, as in the Gandhiji's case. So that is what I suggest. Of course, there are litigations. I am not suggesting all the litigations. I mentioned there are cases which requires adjudication. Such cases are there, always there. It will be there for you also, as social entrepreneurs. But there are cases which can be disposed of soon. You know it. And you know it. And when you know that, should not delay that case. There are cases which requires adjudication. It is not negotiable. Okay. There are such cases.
Definitely.
I agree.
That's a valid point out.
You should understand those cases which can be settled.
So up till today in India, major of the whatever startups were coming out with the help of youngsters. We're just like concentrating on different industries like edtech, most probably, and new technological advancements industry, information technology industry. But recently, we have also seen startups coming in the domains and industries of arbitration, mediation, conciliation, online dispute resolution. So, what would be your message to such entrepreneurs?
I have already answered it. That means you want a result. What is the what does the parties want? He wants solution to his problem. You offer it at the earliest. What is the way out? Is it a litigation and going for adjudication? Or is it you go for an arbitration or conciliation and mediation? If that is the feeling you get, you should suggest it to the parties. Bring it to the already it is part of the law under section 89 of the Civil Procedure Code that this resort to ADR is mandatory. And even in the Arbitration Act under section 30, the arbitrator has to remain the parties that you can go for settlement even now. Though arbitration cut out the delay in the disposal of the case, because if the case is litigated in the regular court, you know take it takes years. Now in the arbitration it is 1 year, so a delay is cut out. With 1 year, you are with an award. Still, it has to be executed in the regular court. So even during that arbitration, the arbitrator has to suggest to the parties under section 30 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act that you may try for a settlement even at that stage. If the parties settle, award is passed according to that. Of course, the arbitrator has to forego a part of his fees, because 50% will be paid only at the end of the hearing. Here, your attitude and approach, the law remains you under section 30 of the Arbitration Act. You should remind the parties a settlement, a better settlement through mediation is possible to you, or conciliation. That is what the even law cautions the parties. Still, it is possible. I suggest that is why I used the words attitude, approach. That should be adopted by the social entrepreneurs.
That's actually a very interesting point to ponder on. Now, I would like to invite all the attendees to put forward their questions if you have got any. Just unmute your mic and you can put forward your questions, Mr. Salvador. Yeah, Aditi, Akansha, Anjali, Anshav, Anshul, Aarti, Vanilla. Yeah, Anshul.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Anshul Sharma.
Sir, my only doubt is that how lawyers are being like social entrepreneurs in the post-pandemic situations. Can you please elaborate this thing? Am I audible, sir?
Yes, it's audible. So, lawyer as a social entrepreneur, that is the question. It is only a new word used in the modern times. So, you are there. There are two sides when you start the profession. You have a social commitment. You have to contribute to the society. Then, first of all, you take up this profession as a means of livelihood also. Of course, you have to make a profit to exist. So it is an enterprise. You have to make a profit. And when it grows, Partners will join you. There will be other supporting staff relying on you. So formerly we were not viewing an advocate or advocate's office, a law firm, in that concept. It is a modern outlook as a social entrepreneur and the law firm as a social enterprise. Because we now have to adopt a lot of technology. The elders are not ready with all the technology. But young lawyers like you adopt this technology for building up your career. You can do it easily, cutting out the delay. So that is why we consider that as a social enterprise.
Thank you, sir. I'm satisfied with your answer.
Okay, welcome, Manshul Sharma.
Anyone else? Any queries? Ritik, Akansha, Kakkan, Mr. Ekant, Ms. Jyotika? No queries at all? Fine.
Sir, I have a
Ritik,
question.
would you
I
like
have
to?
a question.
Any queries?
Yes, sir, I have a question actually. Sir, my question was regarding, since this topic is the social entrepreneurship, the importance of social entrepreneurship. So I was thinking, as a young graduate, how can they contribute to this entire program, like the social entrepreneurship? How can they contribute to that? What is their role, you think?
How can they contribute to this program? They contribute to this program. Yes. You mean this social enterprise or as a social?
Yes, sir. Yes, so what is the young people's role? What is the youth they can contribute?
What is the young people's role? That's a good question. What can the youth contribute? That's your question. That's why I mentioned
Yes, sir.
legal aid and legal extension services. So you, as an young law graduate, begins your career. Nowadays, what I see is that youngsters, first of all, they become make an application to the legal services, whether the Taluk Legal Services Committee or the District Legal Services Authority, to include them in the panel of lawyers. Advocates are wanted. Of course, you get a small fees also from there. That is how nowadays the young professionals begin their career. So, contributing to the society, rendering legal aid, and of course, government has set apart a funds for that also to support the advocates also. A fee is paid to the panel lawyers also. So you can, while you are practicing, you can devote a part of your time for these legal aid matters. There are a number of activities there conducted by the Legal Services Authority, legal awareness programs, taking classes, legal aid clinics in the panchayats, or taking awareness classes. You are in demand everywhere if you are ready to serve the community.
That's actually an interesting perspective, Mr. Salvador. Even Kakkan, like I've seen multiple law students or law graduates from various universities in India forming clubs and then like collecting fees and providing pro bono consulting services to various people who are from financially weaker section of the society. Even Mr. Salvador must have seen some examples like that, right, Mr. Salvador? Okay, fine. So such clubs do help by providing legal consulting services at a very low price, but to only financially weaker sections of the society for a particular period of time. So that's a good.
But Shravan, I had one question
Correct.
to Salvador sir. Sir, actually, talking about legal aid, the people are ready to provide legal aid, but there is some thing that is missing in that. That is the information. Certain times, people don't have the information itself that something like legal aid exists. So, how can we promote that?
See, when people approach you, you have to inform them. If a poor client approaches you, of course you can advise that legal aid is available to you. And direct them to such services. My experience from Kerala is that people are availing of that, such legal aids.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting thing too. Now I would like to thank the audience as well as Mr. Salvador for his amazing speech. And I would like to invite Advocate Riddhi Bhanushali, my co-host from the Mumbai High Court, to take over.
Okay, thank you.
Greetings everyone, I am Advocate Riddhi Bhanushali, a practicing attorney at the Mumbai High Court and enrolled with the Bar Council of State of Maharashtra and Goa. I am Shravan's co-host for Conference 1.0 and the Chief Strategic Alliance Advisor of SK Associates and Group. Even throughout my career as a lawyer, my favorite question that always I ask to the founders are you sure that you have all the vision required to run a startup? Since you all have to guide and direct your board of directors, employees, head of departments, and related teams in human resources, finance, marketing, research and development, compliance related issues, and even technical development. So you need to have a startup. So you need to have a vision to speak on how you and your startup can contribute to the society. I would like to request all the guests and attendees to kindly switch on your cameras. I would also like to inform all of you that Ms. Vaishali Shri and team are conducting polls in the chat box throughout the session. Kindly participate in them actively. Further, I would like to invite Mr. Kavtar for his speech.
I believe you mean Miss Qatar Ridi. Thank you.
I apologize, ma'am. So sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Well, nice to be here with everyone, and thank you for the invitation. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a topic that is really dear to my heart, the topic of social entrepreneurship. And so I want to start with just looking at what is social entrepreneurship from my lens, and what do I mean by it when I speak about it. For me, social entrepreneurship is a process by which individuals, startups, entrepreneurs look at developing and funding systems that address social issues. So for me, a social entrepreneur is someone that's really one of their core questions is how can I contribute and bring solutions to social issues? And by very definition, looking for solutions means looking at things differently. It means looking at what has not yet been done, what has not yet been seen. And just for context, I'm logging in from Canada. I'm Canadian, so I will be speaking a little bit about the Canadian context particularly. but I do work with a very global audience, and I have myself lived in very different countries and cultures. And so I'll be bringing some sort of my global lens to this. And I have lived in India, so I do have some appreciation and knowledge of the Indian context as well. And so social entrepreneurship for me is something that I've seen a lot more of in the last 10 years. I believe that it started from conversation at Davos at the World Economic Forum. And I think the reason for social entrepreneurship is that we are noticing that we're getting tired with everything that's been done and that's not working on one hand. And youth have a very pivotal role in moving social entrepreneurship forward because they have the energy, they have the vision. And what's happening in our global social climate right now is that we're also noticing that we don't necessarily need the amount of resources that we thought we need to contribute with solutions. The infrastructure of social entrepreneurship doesn't require the same level of investment that a classic enterprise would, because it is people-driven. For me, I also call it purpose-driven entrepreneurship. And so the most important part of social entrepreneurship is the vision. It's the person that has a vision. And what I really see often happen is people who have vision get stuck because they have this vision, they see a possible solution, but what they don't see is how they can bring it to life, because they're stuck looking at their solution through the old systems, the old paradigm. But what's really important to recognize is that when you're socially driven, you have also the ability to create community. You have the ability to attract resources in a way that's not the traditional way. And you have the ability to rally people around a vision. And so you can create teams. You can bring people who are heart-centered with you and who are driven by the solution itself to contribute. And so you don't necessarily need to pay the same amount of salaries. You don't necessarily need the same infrastructure. And what's happened with COVID is that a lot of us have noticed we can work from home. And so we don't even need all the office space. We don't need all the things that we thought are really important before, or necessary, actually. And so we're seeing that with very little resources, with enough vision and resourcefulness, we can actually contribute to changing problems. The key thing is starting to look at what has not been done, or what has been done that alone in silo is not working, and what can I add to it to create a real solution. And oftentimes at the very beginning stages of social entrepreneurship, that is the most important piece, is the vision, testing the vision, and having patience to stay with the vision. Because at the very early stages, oftentimes is about failing. And really the lessons are in failing. And then how do we fail forward instead of fail and get discouraged and think, I failed, therefore I can't move forward. It's really about looking at what have I learned from this failure and how can that inform my next steps. And for young people, it's also about having mentors. It's about having people who believe in their visions. And that's kind of where the inner game of leadership comes in. Because visionaries are often people who are also seeking to fit in, and yet they don't. The reality is oftentimes when you're carrying a vision, you see it because you don't fit in. And so that's where the role of investing in groups of people who are often disadvantaged in some way or another, either because they're from a marginalized group, or investing in women as well. It's really helpful because it supports to level the playing field as well as a social ecosystem. And then there's the inner game, which is about how do I stay with my vision? How do I believe in my vision, even though people outside don't yet see it? It takes a few years of tests, trials, failures, before people start to see your vision when you're the visionary. but your desire to fit in, your desire to have validation, which is a natural human desire, is often what stops us. And so having what we call the right brain skills in leadership, the skills of empathy, the skills of listening, the skills of conflict transformation, even of our own internal conflict. When I am as the visionary in a conflict between belonging, which I don't feel a sense of belonging, and a vision which requires me to recognize that on some level I will not belong for a while I'm holding this vision and bringing it forward. How do I resolve that and not stay stuck in that? And so bringing what we call at a scientific level the right brain skills is incredibly important. And those right brain skills, for those to become like the empathy, for example, a right brain skill is also often about making sure all stakeholders are taken care of. And so how do I do that as a social entrepreneur? Because it's simultaneously the strength and the weakness of a social entrepreneur. And that's something that's incredibly important to recognize. And so I think that moving forward, not only is there a huge opportunity, but there's also an awakening in our social fabrics and our social structures that we need new business models. We need business models that sustain people, profit, and the planet. And I think the urgency of some of the issues that we're seeing, environmentally speaking, are also awakening us to that. And the COVID era has certainly shown us the opportunities that we didn't recognize before, in terms of the resourcefulness that we have, the fact that we need a lot less than we ever thought we need. We have managed to survive. Many of us have managed to even thrive, not just survive through COVID, by relying on so much less than we ever thought we needed. And so from my perspective, it's really about starting to ask the questions. It's a process that evolves in the day-to-day. It's not a process that I have to look at, where do I want to be 5 years from now? How much money do I want to make 5 years from now? It's really starting, the core question is, what is the impact I want to see in my community? What does success look like for me 5 years from now in terms of impact? I think that is the core question we need to look at. What is the problem that I will have solved? And then looking at, how will I take care of myself in that process as a social entrepreneur? So how do I create a model that sustains me, that sustains the team that I need? Who do I need to rely on to support me in this vision? And start to look at what are some different ways that I can create that ecosystem around myself. Because relying on the old structures will only bring us the old solutions. We need to start looking at, what can I do differently? What has been done and failed? Why has it failed? And what can I bring to it that's different? Who can I work with that's looking at this outside of the box? And that's how we're ultimately going to change, I think, the global ecosystem. And I honestly think that young people are the visionaries. And if they just find the right mentors, they will absolutely be able to believe in themselves and create sustainable models where they're not making the mistakes that some of us have made, not having had that support system. And yet they're going to be able to bring the solutions that are urgently needed, not only in dire need, but urgently needed in the world. So I'll just pause there for a bit, and I'll see if there are any questions. I know I did say I'll talk about the Canadian context, and I can share a little bit more about that. I'm just wondering if there are any questions.
Different. Kavtar, actually, I had a question. So since
Sure.
you said that we have a social awakening, it's like not about the question that how much we'll earn from 5 years from now. It's more about the thing that how much impact will we create 5 years from now. So
Yeah,
people who basically go to create impact, they face a lot of patience issues in the longer run. Do you have any message for those students who might face such issues amongst our audience?
yeah, absolutely. I would say it's really about recognizing that impact is the core. Impact is your foundation. what drives you for impact, and then recognizing that you also need to create a model that's sustainable for yourself. And so you begin with the impact, and then you look at how can I make it sustainable for me and for the team that I'm bringing in. And from my lens, I work in a way that's really about purpose. Purpose is the core of my work, purpose-driven leadership. And what I see is there is a false belief that when we're purpose-driven, we can't make profit. And that has been debunked by research. It's certainly been debunked for me working with social entrepreneurs over the years. What actually happens when you're purpose-driven or socially conscious is that there's a first phase where it feels like it's a lot about sacrifice. But eventually you get to this time where you start to get traction, and naturally money starts to come in, because money is a byproduct of impact. Money is a byproduct of vision. It's a byproduct of aligning with the right people for your vision. It's not that the money is not available. It's just that you need to have aligned with your vision sufficiently that people begin to see it as well.
That's exactly the correct thing. Riddhi, if you have any queries?
Yeah, sure. Ma'am, actually, according to the recent scenario after COVID, we have faced a lot of psychological issues. So, can it be a social cause, and can the entrepreneurs bring something for this kind of people, or help people to cope up with their psychological issues as social entrepreneurs?
I believe there's a lot that we can do. I think we need to look at, we have two paradigms really for that. There's the paradigm of illness and there's the paradigm of well-being. And I think if we amplify the paradigm of well-being, if we bring to people the preventative skills that support their well-being, whether it's psychological, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, and really a combination of all. And then we can also look at how can we tap into the medical system so that medical professionals can also support from the medical lens. I think there's a lot of promise in that. And I know in India there are so many resources for wellness. And I think it's a matter of strategically bringing them together in a way that really works. And I know there are a lot of people that are already doing that in many ways. And it's a part of the work that we do as coaches, consultants, and a part of the work that finding doctors who have the overlap of the medical model with the wellness model, I think have a lot of promise to bring to that.
Yeah, ma'am, satisfied with your answer.
That's really awesome. I would like to invite the audience to put forward their queries, if any. Yeah, Sonal, any queries?
I will just contribute to the discussion.
Sure.
That formerly we required much infrastructure to set up an enterprise. Now we can do it virtually. Our speaker mentioned that we need not spend much money for the infrastructure, physical infrastructure. We can create a virtual space and operate virtually. So formerly, for example, as I spoke in my case, setting up a law firm. Formerly it required much space, much furniture, hundreds of books. Now everything is available virtually. You can operate with a very good laptop. You can offer your services online. That makes things a lot easier. So overhead expenses is cut down from that angle. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is also one thing that makes social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in today's time very inexpensive, to be frank. Each of us must have experienced that,
Yes.
including Sonal, Kavita, you, and definitely.
Absolutely.
Actually, I don't have a question, but first of all, very nicely told about social entrepreneurship and your point that at one time, when you're working, especially if you're a new startup, there does come a time when things are not moving and you really feel that, as a mediator, I'd call it an impasse, a social impasse occurs. So your words that one should really keep going no matter what, and change the dimension or look towards, think out of the box. It's really helpful. So in all, too good speech. Thank you so much. It was really
Thank you
wonderful.
very much.
Shravan,
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry.
yeah, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Shravan, as you said, that the entrepreneurs give up if they fail, right? So, for example, if I am an entrepreneur, okay, I am an entrepreneur, I am doing some business, I am giving legal services, okay, I get some clients, I get everything, but at a point, I don't get that satisfaction or that uh, thing which I want, and I lose. I feel like I don't want to continue. Okay, so what will help me? What can motivate me to again get back into that field and again do that things? So, do I need to start from zero, or again that pace can continue?
Yeah.
I think so. I've done proper with the question.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question, Rudy. I will say there are two dimensions to that question. For me, anyways, from my lens. There is the internal dimension of should you go back in the first place? And I've actually been in that very specific spot because I am a lawyer by training and a mediator. And I changed careers to become a coach and consultant and facilitator later. And so I would say from a coaching lens, really the most important question is to look at what is it that drives you? Because when a failure stops you, it's one of two things. Either you have a strong inner critic that's scared of failure, and that's something that gets resolved internally with practices like mindfulness, coaching, practices of self-awareness and self-development. If it is external, if it can be that your drive is no longer there because you have seen something that you can't unsee. For me, for example, that happened when I was a lawyer and I attended a mediation process where I saw that after 2 days, the parties had found a resolution that was much deeper than they would find in the legal system. And I started to wonder, what is it that I can bring more of? What is it that I can do to bring more of this type of resolution where people actually feel a sense of resolution beyond just a paradigm where they feel like they've been told this is right or this is wrong? It also has the benefit of lightening the burden on the formal judicial system when we can equip mediators and support people to bring alternative tools. And so for me, it was a question of, I can't ignore that this is also very effective. And that's where it felt like I wanted to contribute more. And so it's going to look at which is the real core problem. Is it that I'm not motivated because I'm scared of failure? That the core of the topic still speaks to me, in which case I just have to move through that failure and recover internally and then go back to continuing my work? Or is it that I need to bring another element into my work now as a lawyer and look at alternative solutions as well? And then how do I build a model that's scalable where it has the dual functions? Does that answer your question, Rudy?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Since we are all done with the questions, I would like to invite any of our audience to put forward any questions that you have. Kushi Parekh.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. This is Akanksha. Just now you talked about the drive and the vision. I have this question, a doubt, that should I focus on a social problem which is affecting me locally, or should I focus on a social problem which is affecting me globally? Because when I go for a global problem, it will attract a lot of attention from investors and all sectors, different government sectors. So should I go for a global issue, global problem at a larger scale, or should I just start from the local issues, smaller problems, small
Yeah.
ideas, and should I implement them first and then go for some global idea which can be implemented at a global level? What should I go for? I mean, the thing you said, that money is the byproduct. When I think it in terms of that, I can see that when I talk about the global problem, there will be a lot of money. There will be a lot of investments from various sectors. So should I go for that, or should I just go for my local issues, local problems, these
Yeah.
areas?
Yeah, thank you, Akansha. For me, really, your question, what I hear at the core of it is, how do I make sure that I'm making money? And so the decision that you're making is based on, is it the right fit to be local or global to make sure that I make money? The question I would ask you to look at is the problem you really want to contribute to local or global? So begin with yourself. Which of the problems do you really wake up wanting to contribute to? Because if you're driven, you will find the internal resources to create the external ones. So if you're driven, you start to ask the questions. If what drives you is local, then you look at locally, how can I make sure that I have funding? Locally, how can I make sure that I have allies that want to invest, even if it's not through traditional routes? If you just go for the global, for the funding, you might get the funding, but then you might find yourself not motivated to really sustain the endeavor that you start. I'll go back to something that Salvador said earlier. He said human problems are the same, and I really believe that. Human problems at core are the same, and they're the same everyone. The intensity might be different from one place to another. So if you start local, there's nothing that's going to stop you from going global, if that's really your path as an entrepreneur. But the easiest way is to follow what I call the flow. And the flow really means where is the place where my skills, my motivation overlap. And when you find that, then the rest really grows naturally and organically.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you don't mind, can I add to your point on that?
Sure, absolutely, Ansha, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, just want to kind of quickly tell you, I think the best mantra of being success is to think global but act local. So because if you are able to see the only thing which you could immediately change or understand is only within your near vicinity. You may not understand what's happening even in the next city or even in the next neighborhood probably. Forget about state, region, country, or even the globe. So it is always better to find your core area, your story which touches you. Focus internalizing it. Okay, know about yourself little more. Find out what interests you on that. Once you find that area, do think about as a global problem where all it is there, but start acting it out local. Now the numbers may be very small in a local, that doesn't matter, but start impacting lives one by one. That is what it is more important. So while you can think of the global warming or changing the global scenarios, but if you're not able to change or bring transformation within yourself first, you cannot do anything.
Absolutely.
Remember, everything starts from you. So transform yourself first before even going out.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting point, Mr. Jain. Now, I would like
Thank
to
you.
thank Avtar for an amazing speech. Actually, it was very motivating and inspiring too. Would be a very great, fit for leaders, definitely. Whoever here wants to try out entrepreneur. Now, if the audience doesn't have any questions, I would further like to invite our next guest. Nobody? Fine. Riddhi, you may invite them. Yes. Fine.
Yeah, sure. Now I would like to thank Kavtar for her informative and knowledgeable speech. Now I would like to invite Mr. Alan Davile, the founder and CEO of Heart to Heart Business, from Canada to commence his speech.
Thank you so much, madam. Can everyone hear me okay? No?
Your volume is quite low, Alden. Now we can't hear you.
Your audio is exactly off, Alden. If you could just switch it on. Oh.
How is that?
Oh.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me here. One of the first things I want to talk about is that when I'm dealing with a younger crowd, I want to go off script. Okay? I have nothing planned here. I do have something planned, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to shoot directly from the hip. I'm going to echo a lot of things that the previous speaker just spoke. Thank you so much for that. This so resonated with me. So I want you guys to loosen up, especially when I'm dealing with a younger audience. I want you guys to really think about it. I want you to use all 4 quadrants of your brain, and I want you to lay back, and I want you to give me what your thoughts really are. Forget about protocol. Forget about intellectual discourse. I want to hear from your soul what you're thinking. Okay? So I'm an award-winning entrepreneur who has had a dozen businesses. I've bought and sold startups my whole life. I used to work in the corporate world, in the telecommunication industry, and I found myself being very, very despondent what I saw in a big corporation. No disrespect to big corporations, it just wasn't for me. I saw so much waste that I just couldn't handle it. So I went out on my own and I opened up a small bookstore in a tourist town in Canada, in Nova Scotia, Canada. And I ran this bookstore for a number of years. And I had one book that was on my shelf, and it was called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. I never, ever, ever sold that book. I kept that book on the shelf, and if anyone ever came to me and said, I'd like to purchase this book, but there's no price tag on it. And I said, that's because that book is not for sale. Well, I really want to buy this book. I said, read the title. That is all you really need to know. Okay, so now here in Eastern Canada, I run an international global organization known as H2HB, Heart to Heart Business. I'm also a transformational business coach, and I call myself a spiritpreneur, which means I am a socially conscious entrepreneur. Now, as the previous speaker so eloquently said about what is socially conscious businesses, I want to take a little bit of a broader, not a broader, but a more esoterical outlook at what that means. Okay? So when we preach what we do, we want people to look at their social enterprise exactly as Ms. Qatar said. However, look at it from the point of view as having work, life, play, balance. It is actually your purpose and your why coming together to do something that fulfills you every single day that you go to work. That you know that you have a purpose out there that is larger than just business, because it has a social conscience. And people will come to you simply for the fact that you are socially conscious being an enterprise in your community. Now at H2HB, we want to change the world one business at a time, one community at a time. So our whole idea is, I know very little about India, so my apologies for that. But if there's a small town in India that has 3 grocery stores in it, and one of those grocery stores is supporting their local school with a luncheon program, we want to shine the light on that grocery store. By doing so, we hope to raise the consciousness of the other 2 grocery stores in that community. And by doing that, one business at a time, one community at a time, we believe that we can change the world. Okay, so what else do we have to know about social entrepreneurship? change. And what does this mean during the pandemic? That is the big question. That's what I've been brought here to talk to you guys about. We have literally been slingshotted into the near future from a technological standpoint. From a technological standpoint, in Canada or in the West, we use a thing called dog years. Does anybody know what that means, dog years? Okay, for 1 year of a dog year equals 7 years of a human life year. So if we've been shot into the near future by 10 years, that means we have moved 70 years into the future, especially from a technological level, and we have a lot of catch up to do. Now, you guys out there, you students, you're young, you're adaptable, and what I'm about to say is going to be a little controversial. People from my generation need to step out of the way. Boomers have got to step out of the way. They need to mentor, positively mentor, be a gatekeeper, break down the red tape, but let change happen with the youth of today or the generations of today, because we are stymied. We are stymied, and there's no reason in my mind that we should all be flying around in water cars by now. However, the system keeps us back. The system, the gatekeepers of that system are the boomers. We are teaching you old ways to protect ourselves, to protect our interests, and to keep the old guard going. It's up to you, the new generation who's coming out, to create social change. We've always done this. In the West, we've had hippies that came out in the 60s, and that was the area where the pendulum swung far to love, peace, and creating a more conscious world. However, the pendulum swung back. They got older, they wanted to enter the corporate world. Suddenly money became very important, status became very important, all of this became very important. So what happened, I will only speak for the West, is that we have this huge gap between the rich and the poor. Everybody wants to be rich, and they're willing to spend whatever amount of money they have to look rich, to drive a nice car, have a Gucci belt, but basically don't have 5 cents in the bank. We need a mind shift right now. There's a gentleman here in Nova Scotia who works for a huge data. He owns a huge data company. He has access to the same amount of data as Google, Elon Musk, whoever you're thinking out there has. And when I told him I wanted to start H2HB, because when I sold my previous business, I had a falling out with the ownership because I didn't feel that they were treating the people the way they should be treated. And so this man who lives very close to me said to me, he goes, well, you know, he collects data on a huge level, but he's a humanitarian. And he said that we've come to a point in our world consciousness where 12.5% of the people on the globe are ready for a spiritual transformation. To me, that was exciting to hear. So what do we do? So I said, that's great. I'm going to leave this position and I'm going to create a socially conscious business association that believes in the values of kindness, respect, inclusion, and love. And you'll still make money. You'll just spread your money elsewhere. You'll be able to look at something that is beyond yourself, that's looking after your community. And as the previous speaker said, we need to think, think local and act globally. Was that it? Or did I have it reversed?
Yeah. Think local and act.
Okay, this is all. Well, I think
Yeah.
we need to
So that was think global, act local.
That's right. Act local, think global. Okay? So the only thing that I'm doing there, Ashev, is changing the sequence of what you're saying, because we need to work at home. We need to look at our personal surroundings. It's just like the previous speaker had said, is that we need, and I think it was you again, Ashev, is that we said we need to work on ourselves first. We need to look at what we want and what is important to us and the kind of future that we want to have. So if we're looking at ourselves and saying, am I happy with the present progress of what we're doing in the world? You have to ask yourself that. And you have to look around. What do we see? We see war. We see globalization. We see famine, which is probably going to be our next global challenge, is famine, due to environmental issues that we're going to be having in the next few years. Look for famine. India will be directly affected. Africa will be affected. Certain other areas are going to be affected by a global famine. Keep that in mind. That is probably going to be one of our next global challenges. And I don't know about India, but food prices in Canada have gone through the roof. Gas prices are gone through the roof, where I believe that we're ready for a full-blown recession in the world. So this is why I think we need a global consciousness that looks not only after yourself, but we have to get back to the ways where we look after one another. And we have to think that we are just one part of a larger piece of the puzzle. And if we can do that, we can heal ourselves one person, one community, one business at a time. Because we've been transported so fast into the future, businesses are going to be in trouble. Those who haven't pivoted, the boomers haven't been really great with technology and digital access to technology. So therefore, they're finding that they're struggling. The younger generations are coming in and they're filling the gap in those areas because they see the potential. They see the potential of sitting right here and doing what we're doing right now, and how that can actually change the world. Mindfulness is coming into the workplace. The workplace has changed forever. It's never going back to the way it was. Remember when Google came out with the offices? We all thought, oh my God, these are so cool. Wide open spaces, work environment. This is before we understood more about how introverts and extroverts work together. Introverts, they need their quiet time. They need their spaces. Working at home has saved a lot of introverts. But the workplace is going to become smaller. It's going to become more digital. It's going to become more global. We're going to see people all over the world connect like no one, and we're going to have one mind. Don't get me wrong. We still going to think differently. We can't help that. We have, our reptilian brain will always go to fear first. What we need to do is create mindsets that are looking after not only you, but who's coming behind you, your children. I'm a native indigenous person, an Indian that they used to call us here, because when Columbus first saw us, they called us Indians because they thought we looked like you. And as an indigenous person from Canada, I look and I see how we, this generation, can actually change the world for the better. And when when I said that the boomers need to get out of the way, I know I'm going to offend a lot of my fellow boomers by saying that, but we have an important part to play. And that is to be mentors, positive mentors. Qatar, you mentioned that earlier, and it's so true. We have a place in tomorrow's world by cutting the red tape for the next generation, for getting out of the way, for breaking down systems that no longer serve us. All the policy in the world has been written. We don't follow any of it, or we follow it when it's convenient for us. We need real change in this world, and we need people to address their purpose and their why. Your why is why you want to do it, and your purpose is your long-term. Your why is your immediate, your purpose is long-term. And what's going to fulfill you through your challenges of becoming an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be sleepless nights. there's going to be anger, there's going to be tears. But when you wake up in the morning, you're going to say it was all worth it, because I am creating not only a good life for myself, but I'm creating a better life for my community, my country, for the world. I'll leave it at that. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, I am totally open.
Riddhi, any questions down there? Kavta, Sonal?
Not a question, but I just want to say thank you so much, and that was beautiful. Really
You're welcome.
well.
I think we have to exchange, we're going to have to exchange numbers, because I think
Absolutely.
I'll then,
think
I had
we,
one question down for you. Since your startup is named Heart to Heart Business, can you explain the concept there? Like, how does it connect more and more people?
okay, that's a great question. So I used to own an international language school here in Canada, and we recruited all over the world. And we had new ownership come in, and we always ran a very conscious business where everybody was treated equal, no matter where they were in the supply chain, no matter where they were, teachers, students, the janitor, everybody got treated well, with kindness and respect. The new group came in, and we had some fundamental differences. And I can remember having a very uncomfortable and argumentative session with the new ownership. There has to be more to life than this. There has to be more to purpose in our lives just to earn money to do whatever it is you want to do with it. And I said, I do not want, I've always had social enterprises when I was in business. And when I look at a social enterprise, I look at yes, what you can do for the community, but you can do anything, with all due respect to Miss Qatar, is that you could be an automobile dealership and still run a heart-to-heart conscious business. You can be a massage therapist. You could be the mechanic. You could be anybody and still treat people with kindness, respect, integrity, and inclusion. There's no reason you cannot do that, no matter where you're at in whatever type of business you're running. So by doing so, you raise the consciousness of your business, especially if everyone gets on board with the philosophy. And that has to come from leadership all the way down to how you want everybody to respond to your business when they hear your name. And I'm not talking about dollars and cents here. The dollars and cents will look after themselves. It's what do people say when they look at your business, and they say when they want to recommend you to somebody else. Oh, you know what? They charge a little bit more, but I guarantee you, you'll be happy when you leave that place. Or part of the monies that I gave to that company are going back into my community to support worthwhile charities or events.
That was actually interesting, Alan. Kavta, even I had the same question from you. Like, could you just explain how like the business model works? Consciousness together. How did you come up with this title for a startup?
Yeah, absolutely. So conscious togetherness, the title really came to me just as I was meditating and asking the universe, what's my next step? How can I serve others in a way that also enhances my own life? And for me, purpose is something that I live in my day-to-day. And purpose really means opening our hearts, our minds, our souls to something that's bigger than ourselves. And so that's really how the name came to me. It's not something that my mind came up with. And in terms of the business model, it's, I would say, an emerging business model because every season has different requirements. And I think that's a natural part. But I would say that it has been, for me personally, to be honest, as a woman and having gone through certain experiences, I wanted a business where I could prove to myself my own leadership capacities. And so it's a business that I have built entirely self-sustained from the beginning. Having reinvested a certain income, having left my old job, And I've been growing it that way since. So I haven't necessarily tapped into investment resources or into government programs, but I know they are available. And possibly, I mean, this year I'm launching my book, and I'll be looking at scaling. And at that stage, I might be looking at those options. But that's kind of how it came together. And a lot of the social entrepreneurs that I work with don't really need a lot of funding either to get started. And that's why I really encourage people to start. And again, it's so important to have room to fail. And it's so much easier to fail when you have yourself to deal with rather than a large group of people that you need to justify a vision to when you don't yet have it together. So for me, it's been easier to fail forward on my own, having a strong support system, rather than having to answer to people before I had the answers myself.
That's actually interesting. So now I would like to request the audience, if you have any questions for Mr. Alan, Avtar, Mr. Anthony Salvador, or any of our guests on the panel today. Yeah, I would like to apologize on behalf of Mr. Maheshwari. He's actually running an election campaign in the midst of Delhi, so he couldn't come here, but he will definitely appear in some of our upcoming conferences.
Shravan, I had one question.
For Alan, sir.
Shravan. Yeah, Anshul, you can go and I'll ask after you.
Sure, ma'am. Sir, my question is, earlier you have said that there is one book, do whatever you love and money will flow. Can you please tell me the author of this book, as I also want to read this book?
Well, Google it because I don't have it right on. I last spoke on this a couple of years ago, and I can't remember who the author's name is, sadly, because to me, it's not as important as the title.
Sure, sir. I will Google it.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. But one of the great things about that book is I've been asked to sell that book. One person offered me $1,000 to sell that book, and I did not sell it. I still have it.
That's pretty amazing.
That was over 25 years ago. That was my first business over 25 years ago.
I'll definitely read this.
Alan, because even I'm like very specific and positive about it. I've got hundreds in library and I just won't even give it out much. Quite useful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Alden. I think that's precisely why social entrepreneurs end up succeeding after sometimes failure, is that there are certain ethics that we hold on to, no matter the financial success that might come from doing otherwise. And one of those ethics is the inclusion, is working with communities. And so it's so ingrained in what we do that we're willing to bear the cost of what can be perceived as loss, because we're winning in the larger picture.
I agree. And if you're out there looking for funding and you're running a social enterprise, a socially conscious enterprise, and you're out there and you're active digitally in the world, you never know who's going to help. Not just with money, but it could be with a referral. It could be with advice. It could be with a number of things that will help you proceed with your business. Because not every day, as Ms. Qatar said, it's that you're going to fall down. You're going to hit walls. All entrepreneurs hit those walls. You just have to have the perseverance to move through that and to know that your idea and your product or service is needed and wanted, and you just have to find your market. And finding your market out there, especially in today's world, your niche out there, no matter how small. Picture your desk right now that you're sitting at. Take a pen. Drop your pen on your table, and that dot is your niche market. There are over 7 billion people in the world. That dot could represent 10 million people. You simply need to use the right hashtags to find your people. Okay? They're out there. We no longer have to go banging on doors. Everybody is out there for you. And the old models, don't think in the old way. come up with new ways. That's always been the evolution of business, but we have been slingshotted into the future, and it's the young people who are going to come forth with new ideas, new belief systems when it comes to the working model. And the only thing I will say is when you're in business after your first year and it doesn't look like the way you wanted it to be, that means you've changed. That means you are adapting. So what you've originally thought about as your business model may look completely different in 6 months. It could look completely different in 1 year, and then it could look completely different in 5 years. However, the soul, the main idea of your business is still there. You have adapted, you have learned, and you have learned from your mistakes.
That's actually
Mr. Alvin, one question for you. Sorry, Shravan, I'm going beyond time, but just a few minutes, Yeah. Mr. Alden, as you said, we have to cut the old beliefs, right? So, cutting the old beliefs will bring a change. But what about the people who have strong firm over that beliefs? Who are the people who can cut out that strong belief of them? So, can a social entrepreneur group or a social or a youngsters do that, and can it be possible? Because it is very hard to make a person change who does not accept changes.
Yes. Well, first of all, very true. There's two things here at play. One is if you are not adaptable to change, you will almost assuredly fail, or you will certainly struggle as an entrepreneur if you're not used to changing, pivoting, and doing what you need to do. How many of us who are in business now had to change the way we do business because of the pandemic? How many people lost their life savings? How many people are now struggling with depression, struggling with a sense of purpose, struggling with whatever this pandemic has done because we've become somewhat isolated, and not everyone is adaptable to doing what we're doing here online. We need social interaction. We need human touch. That's what we are. We're human beings. We have there's a social aspect to us. So if you can't change, or you have difficulty changing, you will struggle. Go get help. Go get a mentor. Go get a coach. Find someone who can help you get out of your comfort zone, out of some of your limiting beliefs, and move forward, because you need to evolve. And we all need to evolve right now. And it's the youth. It's the people that I'm looking at, these younger people right now that are still in school. Your education is important. Don't get me wrong. But it is not everything for you. You have a mind of your own. You're going to see things. You're going to be able to look at things in a different way. Keep an open mind and look for ways to make your community better, to make life better. Because it is out there for you. And you might say to yourself, well, you know what? I really want to work 10 years, because I want to walk around with Gucci shoes and I want to drive a Ferrari. Okay. Eventually, your social skills will catch up with you, and you're going to say to yourself, I want to do something more. I want something more. Maybe you'll have a family, and you'll see the look in your child's eye and say, I have to protect this planet for this next generation. In the native culture, in the indigenous culture in Canada, we look at things from 7 different generations. You may have heard that term before, 7 generations. You are in the center, your parents, your grandparents ahead of you, your kids, your grandkids below you. And that's what we have to do when it comes to looking after any type of change that we make, any great leap of faith that we take. How will it affect the children?
Yeah, that's the point.
I'm sorry, and I just want to say thank you very much. I'm sorry that I have to leave the call. And Alden, I'll try to find you online and connect.
Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, I am.
Let's connect over on LinkedIn, please. And I welcome any of you to connect with me and Kautar on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Everyone can put their LinkedIn profile in the chat so that we can connect to each other.
Absolutely.
I would like to thank all the guests for their amazing speeches. And I apologize on behalf of Mr. Maheshwari as he is engaged in a political campaign down in Delhi, our capital. Further, if any of the audience have any queries, I request the guest speakers to just share your mail IDs in the chat box so that any of them can simply mail out their query to you. It would be the most convenient thing out here.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvador.
The book that do what you love, the money will follow is by Marsha Senator, and it's on LinkedIn. Oh, sorry, it's on Amazon. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would also
It's
like to
okay,
thank
Bob.
all our
You cover it.
audience for watching us live on YouTube, for subscribing to our channel and definitely bestowing us with your blessings. And I also request all of you who are currently present to subscribe to our channel for upcoming conferences, and definitely we'll also host workshops in upcoming times. Thank you everyone for your gracious presence and making this a wonderful event as always.
Thank you for the kind invite.
Yeah.
Take care, all.
Bye.
We shall meet tomorrow again at the same time for the second session of Conference 0 from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Thank you. Have a great day and enjoy yourselves.